Hey guys, today we're going to talk about graphing on the coordinate plane, which isn't all that much different than what we wrote in the notes on the coordinate plane. We are going to focus in on a couple things, make sure that you understand them, and also what I should see every time you graph. Okay, so lesson 5-7, graphing on the coordinate plane. Today's date's 1/22/2020. I apologize in advance for my stuffed up nose, but that's as good as it gets today. So let's refresh our memory about ordered pairs. Remember that some of you got to do a Kahoot yesterday where they called it, what was it? Ordered couple or something like that? Ordered pair. Okay, so an ordered pair has some key components. Component 1, it must have parentheses. So I'm going to say surrounded by parentheses. If you guys don't have parentheses, then it's just two numbers separated by a comma. So make sure that you have the parentheses. Okay? Then, inside the parentheses, we're going to have the x term, the x coordinate must come first. So the x coordinate comes first. Oops. And this leads to, when we graph, a horizontal move. So we're going to move right or left, okay? All right, and then we need to have a comma. And there must be a comma. Separating the coordinates. I should put this in the center, shouldn't I? Oh well, it's where it is now. Then we're going to have a y coordinate. And the y coordinate always comes second. And with this guy, you're going to have a vertical move when you graph. So that means you're going to go up or down. Okay, so that's what an ordered pair looks like. Okay, I'm going to box that guy up. Ordered pair. All right, so keep that in mind because you're going to get graded on all of that. And now I'm going to do a brief review of the graphing piece. I'm going to be really brief. So to graph, we're going to go from origin to the x coordinate. Then we're going to go from the x coordinate, so we haven't moved anything, haven't marked anything, and we're going to go to the y coordinate. So we're going to shift either up if it's positive or down if it's negative from the x coordinate. And then we're going to graph a point. Oops. And that's going to be a solid dot. Make it large so we can see it at this point. So at this point I've made a right-left move from the origin, and then from that point gone up or down, and that's where I'm going to graph. Now, we also talked about labeling. So we're going to label the point. And we talked about a couple different ways to do it. So we talked about a capital letter. We talked about the problem number. And you might also see them having the coordinates written as an ordered pair. Okay, so that's a third way that we hadn't mentioned before. All right, so let me just talk about signs real fast. Let's talk about x. So if I have a positive, I'm going to move to the right. If I have a negative coordinate, I'm going to move to the left. And then with y, if I have a positive, I move up. And if the coordinate is negative, I move down. Okay? All right, so let's get to the real crux. And I'm going to talk to you about what I expect to see when you set up a graph. Okay, now some people are going to try to find graph paper like this. I'm going to write a little note up here where you can go. This is my favorite place to go. You can get any kind of graph paper you want. This guy's called math.aids.com. And you can get all sorts of graph paper. You can get all sorts of everything. And it's free. Okay, now there are some things that graphs come with that have been pre-printed and some things they may not. You may be creating graphs by yourself, so these are some things to look for, or what I look for. Okay, so first, you need to make sure that there's arrow caps at the ends of each line. So you can see arrow cap, arrow cap, arrow cap, arrow cap. I need to see those, okay? Next thing, we're going to label the x-axis on the right. On rare occasions, you'll see somebody do it on the left, but then you don't even know where it is because your eye never looks there. So, very important. We're going to label the y-axis on top, not the bottom. So you can see him right there. We're going to mark tick lines. I'll show you that in just a second. Mark tick lines, or let's do it this way, mark ticks. And we're not talking those little things that suck blood, but mark ticks on the lines of the graph paper. Only. This means do not make tick marks in between the lines of the graph paper. Otherwise, there's no point to have graph paper. Okay, so graph paper spaces things out equally, and that's what we want when we graph, is to have things equally spaced out. So if I use graph paper and then I make little lines in between the lines of the graph paper, then I've lost all my accuracy. Okay, so mark ticks on the lines of the graph paper only. So this is what I'm talking about right there. Boom, boom, boom. So I'm not going to make marks in between the lines. Okay, I'm making them right on the lines of the graph paper. You can do this with a solid piece of graph paper, and you can also print that out. Go online and Google graph paper, and there's all sorts of free platforms out there excuse me, where you can create your own kind of graph paper. So that's super helpful to have if you don't already buy some. I recommend having some. You can use it for all sorts of stuff. Okay. Next, we're going to list integer values only. At the tick marks. Okay, and as you can see, I've kind of covered them up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, and so on. So you can see those marks, they're numbers that are there. I can just kind of circle them up a little bit for you. Okay? And then here as well. So we don't put halves, we don't do that. I saw your book did halves, which is kind of goofy. Usually you just have two whole numbers and then you graph exactly halfway between them. Okay? Now, honestly, this graph paper, I don't understand why they did this because it seems like it's too much. But I would only list the evens only. And the reason why I say that is it gets too messy otherwise. So I would just list this guy, this guy, this guy, this one, this one, this one, this one, and so on, okay? And then it just makes it not so messy. And you'll see me demonstrate that many, many times. All right, so let's do a couple of examples, and then we're going to call it a set of notes. So the directions are going to ask us to graph and label each point on the coordinate plane. So I think we have a total of 4 that we're going to graph. So the first one is point P, and it's located at -2, 4. So some of the things I kind of think about as I'm getting ready to graph is what are my moves going to be. And so I'm going to move left from the origin 2 and then up 4. So that's what those two numbers tell me to do. So I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to move left 2, and then I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I mark a point. It's kind of hard for me to mark points on this. So there's my point at -2, 4, and then I'll label it P. Next one. We've got Q. Remember capital letters here. 0, -4. So the interesting thing on this one is that I am not moving right or left of the origin. So I'm staying at the origin, and then I'm going down 4. Okay, so let's go ahead. I stay at the origin, and I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and I end up here. So that's my point Q. Third point, we've got R. Now we get a little tricky. We're going to do -1/2 and -2 1/2. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to go left because of the negative from the origin, 1/2. So I'm going to be between 0 and 1, and then I'm going to go down 2 1/2. So I'm going to be halfway between 2 and 3. So let's find that. So we go from the origin, we go left 1/2 and then down 1, 2 1/2. So it takes us right here. Make it as big as I can. And that is going to be your point R. Okay. And then last but not least is this guy, point S. And he's 4.51. So I'm going to go right. Oops, sorry, wrong color. Let's do 4.5, so that's going to get me right between 4 and 5, halfway between, and then I'm going to go up 1. Okay, so from the origin, I go halfway between 4 and 5, and then I go up 1. So that would take me right here. And that is my point S. All right, have fun graphing today, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.